everyone, I'm Ari here with Rachel, and we're your hosts for the Merry Writer podcast. This week we're on episode 315, asking how can you develop your characters? Before we start, don't forget to visit and follow our coffee page. You can access lots of free goodies, and if you're in a position to support us financially, you can become a Merry Writer for just $2 a month and get exclusive monthly content. Everything earned on coffee goes to keeping our show going, and we really do appreciate the support. Okay, so we're talking developing characters, and here's just a few ideas we thought of that can help you develop your characters and sort of build upon them. For me, I think a big one is moving beyond the archetypes. Like, I have no issue with using archetypes. I think that's kind of typical. And they're not a bad thing when you're creating your characters to begin with. But if you want them to grow and develop throughout the story, you've got to be careful to not make the archetype the be-all and end-all of who the character is. So an archetype is like a common representation of a concept that can include things like behavior, personality, patterns, and everything like that. So, for example, there are supposedly 12 common archetype characters in writing, such as the hero, the outlaw, the innocent, the everyman, the explorer, creator, ruler, magician, lover, jester, caregiver, and sage. Obviously, you can see how there's like, you can list people, you can list characters under different ones of those. Now, each of these, and obviously other archetypes that can come from them, do have what are considered standard behaviors and patterns that you can lightly figure out. So if someone said, oh, my main character is an outlaw, you can kind of already come up with an idea of how that character might act and react to other characters, conflicts, and the story in general. And the problem comes, I think, is if you're using archetypes and building characters that way, which is fine, they can become the whole image of the character. And in that case, you often find there is no layers. This is just what I've found. Let's not just say it in general. It's just like, this is what I've been finding. And I think if you want your characters to develop, you need to have some form of depth and layers to begin with in order for them to shift and grow and change. Now, you don't have to make them really detailed, multifaceted characters right at the beginning, because we have to learn about them, and a lot of things won't come out until they are hit with conflict, either, internally or externally, and like things going on in the plot and other characters. But I think you definitely need to create characters that are a little bit deeper and give space for growth. And I think archetypes can sometimes be a bit of a crutch, especially if you're new to writing. I've seen a lot of people where they talk about the archetypes and like, oh, these, and they'll like spell out everything. You've got the mage and the warrior and the druid and all this. I feel like I'm just reading off Dungeons and Dragons, but you know what I mean. And the problem is they do have these sets of characteristics that then can become quite restricting. And that's why I think you need to you can start with that, like a mold, but you need to build beyond that before you start your story, if possible, or at least think about how that will create and change throughout the story.
I was just gonna say, I think having an archetype is a good starting point because Ari's right. It does get to a point where I feel like you have that mold, and it's very easy to base that mold off of other characters from books and movies and TV shows that you've seen before. And then there's kind of like this fine line that this character is too similar to that character, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I think we could probably we could probably give ourselves an archetype because it's just how people are and personalities and behavior and stuff like that. You could probably look at people in real life and say, oh, they're definitely like the innocent in their story, or they're the innocent in my story, and whatever. Or I guess they would be the outlaw in your story, maybe if you're enemies. I don't know. So it's a good starting point, but as Ari said, you do need to move beyond that because overall, character development is a gradual process. It should not be rushed, and every character needs to have their own story, which is why I believe you should give each character a beginning, middle, and end. Now, obviously, the end is probably going to be open-ended because A, there might be a sequel, so their character development will grow further in the next book, Or even if there's not a sequel, you're meant to assume that the character lives on beyond the book. So you probably still want to have a little bit of an open-endedness to it anyway. But essentially, similar to the plot line, your characters go on a journey of their own internally. So, who are they at the beginning of the plot? How does the plot change them over time, positively and negatively? Because you need to have both. And finally, how much have they changed by the end of the story? And who are they at the end versus the beginning? Like I said, it's a gradual process. You need who are they in the start? What happens in the middle that gives them that gradual growth? And then who are they at the end? Or, where are they at the end and whatnot?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just going to swing back to a point. You said something that was like perfect. You said how you could have an archetype that's like the innocent, but to another character, that archetype might be the outlaw. And I think that's a really good thing to think, because we do sort of think of the characters like, oh yeah, this character's doing this and these are what they're going through. But their interactions with each other, I mean, one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. And it's an interesting dynamic when you put these characters together and, if you're using the archetype and then having the idea that, yeah, they do need a beginning, a middle, and an end to their story. And how does that affect with the interactions of other characters? Because obviously, if you've got like a hero character, are they a hero? Are they a hero in their own mind with their own people and everything? And I'm going to, if I can remember correctly, I'm going to use an example from when I was younger. Xena Warrior Princess, right? If you remember that, it was a spin-off. Was it a spin-off? It was a spin-off from Hercules, I think it was. The Adventures of Hercules. And her backstory was she was just a regular person in a village or anything, and some bad people came and sort of attacked. And I can't remember it all, it's been a long time, but there was like a rallying and everyone, and they fought back. And then she kind of carried on. So it was like, we've defended our town. Well, we need to stop anyone else from hurting us. So we're gonna extend and go to the next town. And the idea was that she became quite a villainous character originally. That's what she was. She was kind of aggressive, and she would go out and like overthrow people. But it was done because she'd lost a lot in her own life, and it was like that was how you protect yourself. So you started off a hero, and it kind of went to villainy, and then the whole series was her just traveling on her own and kind of a bit of a redemption arc. But that was how it was started. I think if I remember, it was Hercules that kind of changed her mind. But other than that, she was this warrior who went around and sort of like attacked other people. But it was done in a sort of the defense way originally. So obviously for her people, it was like, yeah, she's a hero. Look what she's doing. She's saving us and keeping us safe. For the other villages she went around attacking, less so. So it's always interesting to have those kind of connections to see how other characters react and view your main characters as well as your side characters or your villains or anything. That's kind of an interesting thing. And I think that can give a really interesting growth to multiple characters about a single specific event or issue. I think that's what I meant.
Well, I'm going to branch off of that for a second. And obviously, the characters are going to react to each other in different ways, but you have to think your readers are also going to react to these characters in different ways. Because some of your characters, or one of your characters, might be super relatable to this reader, and not relatable at all to another reader. So they're going to interpret your characters differently too. So they're still going to have that growth, but that growth might be in like slightly different directions or slightly skewed depending on who's reading it. So that's something else you need to keep in mind is that not readers, that's something else you got to keep in mind that characters can be a little bit fluid depending on who's reading the story.
That actually reminds me of something I was talking about with my partner not that long ago about if you remember the movie Beethoven with the big dog. Back in the 90s. I'm going on a nostalgia kick, people. I remember watching that as a kid, and it's like, yay, great movie, blah, blah, blah. You watch that as an adult, and you realize the dad was actually right about a lot of things. Because when you're a kid and you're watching it, it's like the dad's kind of a mini villain where he doesn't want the dog and they kind of bully him into it and he's annoyed and they're like, oh God, he hates the dog. And then obviously you got the bigger story going on. And then you watch it as an adult going, he did tell you to look after the dog. And now he's cleaning it and he's bathing it and he's buying the food and you guys are all enjoying playing with it while he's scrubbing the carpet. And as an adult, you're like, God, those kids are dicks, you know?
Okay, so now I gotta rewatch this movie. I haven't watched it in a long, long time.
It's actually really upsetting when you watch so many movies. It's like Mrs. Doubtfire, and you're like, you know what? Robin Williams' character is not that great, actually.
No,
Such a
no.
bad character.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like just being really crappy with everything. And it's just and especially when they don't always make the, you know, the mother's new boyfriend to be villainous. They started doing that, but a lot of times they were just nice people, and they were just like, and it's like, oh yeah, I don't like you because you're looking after my kids, and my wife dumped me. It's like, you know what? Sounds like she had a reason, and now you're being creepy and like sneaking around and lying to everybody. So maybe she had a reason that you were a divorce, that she divorced you. So yeah. So again, yeah, things change as you age and experience changes. It's an interesting one to do that. So yeah, I do recommend rewatching some programs from your childhood and being shocked at how differently you see it now.
Totally random. Freaky Friday is another one, which I know you don't really care too much for Lindsay Lohan, so I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't because I really don't like her.
Okay, well, when you watch that show as a kid or that movie as a kid, obviously the mother and the daughter butt heads really bad. And as a kid, I always kind of sided with the adults, which sounds backwards because I was like, oh, Anna, I think her name's Anna. She's just so dramatic throughout the whole thing, and her mother's getting married, and she doesn't want to go to the rehearsal dinner, and yada yada yada. And then I've watched it as an adult, and I'm like, you know what? I'm on Anna's side. The adults don't listen to her at all. Her little brother's a jerk, and she gets no privacy. Everybody's all up in her business. Her teacher is actually out to get her, which she does say in the movie, and her mother thinks she's being dramatic. And I'm like, no, Anna's in the right in this entire movie, and I feel really bad for her. Like, she's just a typical teenager. So that's another prime example, but it's like kind of flipped. You'd think as an adult you would side with the adults, and as a kid you'd side with the kid, but that wasn't the case for me.
No, that's it. It's weird how things can sort of change you depending on how you watch it and read it and everything. The problem is you can't decide how it's going to happen because, as Rachel said, you don't know how readers are going to react to it, what their experiences are going to connect to it. All you can do is do it how you want to do it and hope that the character comes across in some way that you want. And with that, I'm going to go back to my main points because I've completely forgotten I was supposed to be doing that. You use conflict. We love conflict. Conflict is one of those things that really moves a plot and can add depth to a character. So you need to make sure that at least your main characters have both inner and outer conflict. Don't forget to throw in some for your side characters as well, but I don't think they need as much. You know, you don't want to give everybody all the conflict. So your inner conflict, your inner struggles, that can usually be things like, you know, grappling with a moral decision, learning something that can change how they see the world or see people, like a trust issue. It could be about having a weakness that they're struggling to overcome, you know, lots of things like that. And inner conflicts are often connected to subplots. Not always, I'm just saying that's often where it goes. Outer conflicts are more noticeably attached to the main plot. You know, that's where they're battling the villain and, you know, reaching the end of the journey, things like that. And that is what a character is fighting for or against, what actions they need to take or should take, obstacles that are coming along. And it could literally be a physical obstacle like a giant wall or a troll or something in the way. Who knows? So yeah, your outer conflicts are what usually affect the main thread of the plot, and your inner conflicts are often likely to affect the character's development and subplot. That doesn't mean that your outer conflict won't affect the character, because obviously if you're, say, on a journey and one of your characters dies during that journey, that external issue of maybe a choice that had to be made that caused it is going to affect your characters. Struggling through, you know, the quagmire is going to affect your characters. It's going to give them, you know, it might bring down their hope, it might make them question things, it might make them quarrel more. So obviously that can affect the plot. Your inner conflict is really good for development. So if you're wanting to give your characters a bit more oomph, I love that word, oomph, think about the inner conflict they can have and how it affects other characters. How we talked about the fact that some persons bad guy is another person's hero. That can be really interesting to work into inner conflicts, especially as things change, as people learn more, as they move through the story. They might learn more, they might question more, they might make different decisions. They might have been a very calm, level-headed character at the beginning, and then something big happened that was a main, outer conflict, and that has changed how they feel. And then they've changed, their personality has changed almost, because it's almost like, you know what? I'm not calm anymore. I'm all out for revenge. Because let's be honest, we all love a big revenge story. So yeah, I find conflict can be really good. And again, if you're listing down how you want your character to be created, you can always think about the conflict before you start the story or before you get deeper into the story, and work out what sort of inner and outer conflicts they're going to have and how are they going to resolve them. Or hey, you don't even have to resolve them. Sometimes they could just get worse, especially if you've got a sequel coming up.
Yeah, I mean, conflict is something that we all go through in our lifetime, internal and external. We all know exactly what conflict is. And sometimes conflict is difficult to write because you're putting a fictional spin on it. But for the most part, you can kind of relate to a good chunk of the conflict that's typically told in stories. And I think one of the great ways that you can utilize conflict for your character development is to think about your own development in life. I mean, basically just ask yourself, how different are you from when you were a teenager or in your 20s or in your 30s and so on and so forth? What major events, good and bad, happened in your life that shaped who you are today? Just think of those times and twist them to fit the plot in your story and how it will eventually affect your characters. Obviously, not saying that you should base your characters off of yourself or real people or anything like that, but I mean, you can still kind of take real life events and twist them just a little bit and just really, I don't know. I mean, I feel like most writers pull on their trauma a lot and write about that or somehow. So you could probably utilize that as a good character development fodder. But essentially, characters are meant to be relatable. So if you can take a look at yourself and how you've grown over the years, you can probably figure out a way to make your characters grow over time in the book.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think you need to have some suffering, so you can write well. And I don't say that like go out and get suffering, but we've all got something, even something small. It could be something like when you were a little kid and you didn't get what you want, or somebody broke your favorite toy. It might sound really small and childish, but when you were in that age, you might have felt devastated. So you take that knowledge and you apply it to, oh, the whole kingdom has been overrun by giants. Devastated. But yeah, no, it's I mean, seriously, we're literally living through, we've lived through, I said I'll use myself as an example, lived through recessions, financial crashes, we've had a pandemic, we've had the threat of World War III that keeps rearing its head, the technology going crazy, and just people having AI boyfriends and girlfriends. There's a lot out there we can take and add to our stories to make them relatable and stress our characters out and put them to the brink of like where they want to cry like the rest of us.
Well, that was a bit of a damper, but with that, I, I just want to add one last little quip because we never clarified whether we were talking about main characters or not. So I just wanted to say that don't forget about your side and your minor characters because they need love too, and they need growth over the course of your book. Not nearly as much growth as your main characters, but they still need to change and grow at some point throughout the book, or else there's probably no point to them.
I concur. And just as a little thing, if you do add a little extra things to your side characters, you could always have a spin-off, a little novella. I kind of like spin-offs of other characters, especially when you get people going, oh my God, I love this character. And it's like, that's a side character that's like, I hadn't even thought about. And now they're like, oh my God, I love it. And you're like, well, I better write them a book or a side story or something. So yeah, you never know what character is going to get like grabbed on by your fans and your readers. So yeah, having a little bit of extra development and like growth is really useful. Okay, now we want to hear your thoughts. How do you develop characters in your story, or how do you like to see characters developed? Let's chat about it in the comments. Remember, we release new episodes every Wednesday. Next week, we're discussing taking book photos for social media. To ensure you don't miss it, hit the subscribe button on your way out. If you'd like to learn more about us, check out our website at themerrywriterpodcast.podbean.com and our coffee page for more content. Thanks for listening to the Mary Writer Podcast. We'll see you next week. This podcast is brought to you by Excessive Caffeine, We Drink a Lot. The music, titled Inspired, is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons 4.0.